Welcome into the Cowboys Report. Tom Downey here with special guest Nick Harris of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. First off, Nick, thank you so much for coming on, man. Appreciate you having me. All right, let us dive in. Cowboys combined talk here. Let us begin with the big ticket item, George Pickens. Where do things stand and how are they looking at this time? Yeah, George Pickens. It is obviously the drama of the offseason, right? And I think with regard to this week, the Cowboys are still expected to meet with his representation this week. We will see how those conversations go, but that is going to be the real catapult into how dramatic this offseason drama actually gets. So yeah, the conversation is going to be built around the franchise tag. David Mulugheta, his agent, along with his main agent, Trayvon Smith, they will be working together on this. These guys do not like the franchise tag. They have been very open about it. We learned that last year with Micah Parsons, even when the threat of a franchise tag was on the table. And it is going to be a big question that the Cowboys will have, and most likely one that will be brought up in these meetings this week with his representation. Hey, if we place a franchise tag on him, is he going to be here for OTAs? Is he going to be here for minicamp? Do we have to worry about him not signing the franchise tag? Because technically he has until like week 7, I think, to actually sign it, and then potentially holding out of camp. There is a lot of things that play into this, but the conversations this week are really going to be the big determining factor on everything that evolves with George Pickens. Makes sense knowing that agency. I know that the trade stuff has been very popular on social media. How real is that side of things? Yeah, I think it is a consideration that you have to keep in mind just because of what happened last year, right? With the Micah Parsons situation, even when Micah Parsons requested a trade, I do not think any of us took it seriously until about 10 days out when we started to hear that the Cowboys were actually discussing offers with teams. And when that happened, that is when everything got real. No one has been more active in the trade market than the Dallas Cowboys in the last 12 months. You could say that from a quantity standpoint or a splash standpoint. I think both ratios have played into the Dallas Cowboys' favor in both of those categories for sure. But it is a consideration you have to keep in mind. And, I really respect Ian Rappaport's reporting. And every time George Pickens is brought up, he always brings up the consideration of a trade. And that has to be thought about in this situation. No doubt. All right, prediction knowing there is a lot that can change here. What do you think ends up happening? I think he plays on the franchise tag. I do not even feel confident saying that, though. There are so many different ways this can play out. And, if the franchise tag is going to be placed on him, the big question is if he signs the franchise tag, and if he does, I think he plays on the tag. And honestly, I think it could benefit both sides if he does. It could very well not benefit George Pickens, though. He is the one who has anything to lose with a franchise tag situation. It is why David Mulugheta and Trayvon Smith rightfully do not like their clients playing on the tag because it threatens their long-term security. But, I do think they could get more out of it at the end of the day, too. Okay, let us talk other internal free agents then here. Let us go with Clowney first, because from what you guys have been able to post, talking with Stephen Jones, it sure feels like that tone has changed in terms of, we want to bring him back to we will see. Yeah, it is tempered for sure. And shout out to John Machota of The Athletic. I thought he did a good job of putting two quotes together that had kind of a juxtaposition. In late December on 105.3, the fan Stephen Jones was saying, absolutely, we want Jadeveon Clowney back. He is going to be one of the first guys we talk to when the season is over so we can figure out a deal. And then yesterday, Nicole Hudson of the Cowboys media team asked him, hey, have you started those conversations with Jadeveon Clowney? He said, no, we got some things to work through. I was like, okay, well, they have already re-signed Javonte Williams. They have been talking to Brandon Aubrey. There have been a couple others that they have met with this week as well. So, I think Jadeveon Clowney, when you look at the fit on a Christian Parker defense, they want to get younger on that side of the ball. And I do not know if a multi-year deal for Jadeveon Clowney necessarily plays into that. Can you say what other players they have met with so far beyond Aubrey? They are working to figure out this defensive tackle situation this week. That is something on their agenda. Kenny Clark, Osa Odigizua, and Quinnen Williams all count 64 to 65 million toward the cap in 2026. They have to figure out that number. Simply put, whether that is extending Kenny Clark and Quinnen Williams or restructuring Osa, whatever you got to do, you got to figure out how to work those cap numbers. Because once the third day of the league year happens, which is March 14th, Kenny Clark will have a $21 million roster bonus that will be activated. And that $21 million counts toward 2026. So they are trying to figure out how to make that more palatable at the end of the day while figuring out how to keep all three of those in line. And when I have mentioned that to people in the past, they ask, could one get cut or traded? And sure, it is a possibility. Their preference is to keep all three. They are toying with these 5-man, 6-man front structures that they can utilize with these three guys. And obviously those three guys are a big part of that thinking. And Steven has kind of gone out of his way to make it clear Clark in particular is a piece that they want to keep. For sure. And there might be a little bit of pride associated with that as well. But Kenny Clark was good last year. Was he great? Maybe not. But I think Kenny Clark with a full offseason in this system and a full offseason playing next to Osa Odigizua and Quinnen Williams, I think the potential of that group is through the roof. No doubt. Let us talk Aubrey then. I know the reports out there of asking for 10. I do not know if you saw his wife on an Instagram comment said that was false. So what is actually going on here? Yeah, there was a report that the Cowboys have offered him a deal that was worth $7.5 million per year. That is not accurate. The Cowboys are okay with making him the league's highest paid kicker. They are comfortable with doing so. I think it gets resolved one way or another, but there are so many built-in advantages for the Cowboys here that they do not really have anything to lose in this negotiation. You know, I talked to someone earlier today and was like, okay, so this is going to be a classic situation, the Cowboys messing up a contract, and it is with their kicker. They cannot even get the kicker right. I was like, well, it is going to be a little bit different this time around because it is restricted free agency. They can put that second-round tender on him. And basically what that does is that keeps him in team control. And if any other team offers Brandon Aubrey a contract, then they can say, hey, yeah, go ahead and walk. And that team will have to pay the Cowboys a second-round pick. I think you take that. It does not matter who the kicker is. There is not a kicker that I think is worth more than a second-round pick to not acquire, especially in a draft like this. But nevertheless, I think the Brandon Aubrey situation is going to get figured out. The $7.5 million deal is not accurate. But he would just need a deal that is worth more than $6.4 million per year to be the league's highest paid kicker. There we go. Okay, I feel better about that one now. Thank you for that. All right, let us talk trade then, because I know you had a nice scoop the other day about Minkah Fitzpatrick on how close the Cowboys were to acquiring him. I am also a big believer when I see the reports from the major media outlets of they are having talks. That means one of two things to me. They are not having talks actually at all, or they want to have better talks. So what are the odds we can get Minkah here? Because I would love that idea. Yeah, Minkah Fitzpatrick is certainly someone the Cowboys have toyed with the idea of acquiring multiple times during his career. Not only 2025, you go back to 2019, and there was a time when the Cowboys were tossing Minkah Fitzpatrick's name around in a serious manner. But, you know, it is a defender that would work in this defense. Absolutely. It is a veteran guy that has had proven production at every stop that he has been at. As far as, hey, how realistic is it right now? It is a little too early to say. Let us see how free agency shakes out. I do not think you are going to see a major trade really anywhere in the league until a couple weeks into free agency, once the dust is kind of settled around what these additions look like. And then maybe we start really heating up the Minkah Fitzpatrick and Max Crosby situations from a league perspective. Not necessarily the Cowboys. I would love to get Max. I do not know if they can afford that one. That is going to be interesting, right? And I think it was Dan Graziano of ESPN who threw out a potential trade the other day where it was George Pickens and the number 20 overall pick for Max Crosby and the number 36 overall pick. I like Dan's work, but I do not know, man. That one would feel like stealing from the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that would be a heck of a trade if it is a 16-spot swap and you get Max Crosby for Pickens. I do not know. The Cowboys are not shopping Pickens. I do want to make sure and make that clear. But yeah, Max Crosby is going to be a fascinating conversation. There are going to be a lot of teams involved there, though. And you mentioned the price. That is going to be a big part of it, too. All right, let us talk draft then. My favorite part. Give me a player you like for the Cowboys. We will just go back and forth here. Oh, man, I mean Caleb Downs. That is the easy one, right? That is the easy one. Sonny Styles. Those are the two at the top for me. Like if it were, hey, you could pick anybody here, I am going Caleb Downs and I am going Sonny Styles. I do not think either of them will be there at 12. You know, the fascinating thing is the Cleveland Browns trade scenario that Zach Walchuk of 105.3, the Fan did a really good job of finding a potential trade partner at the end of the day because they can maybe want to move back and maybe want to move up. And if they moved up to 6, then you start talking about guys like Abdul Carter-Reese, who are fantastic defenders as well. But yeah, there are a lot of defenders in this draft. I like them. I am not going to take all of them from you. Let us say, because I think you make a good point, and I have said before too, that I do not know if Styles gets there, because I think when he goes out and does his testing, it is going to be awesome. I think he is going to test incredibly well. I think a team like the Commanders could be in play at linebacker, potentially there. I do not think Downs gets there. I am a huge fan of Mansour Delane. Does he get there to 12? I think he does. Okay, and that is my pick. The big question for him is going to be how he tests. If he runs in the 4.5s, I actually think you might have a chance at getting him at 20. Yeah, and that has kind of been the buzz I have picked up on today specifically. At the end of the day, you know, if you are a Cowboys fan and you are wanting him to start looking at the little knocks he does have. He is 5'11". He does not have the longest arms in the world. For me, though, when you are asking me, he is an FBP. He is a football player. And I trust the tape and I trust my eyes when it comes to Mansour Delane. He is going to be a great football player at the next level. And I am going to trust that 10 times out of 10. I just wonder if the testing is going to scare some teams away. I know he is not going to have very long arms. That has always been a thing for the Cowboys. They love long-armed guys. Can Parker help change that so I can get the guy that I want? Maybe. How important is this week for Jamal McCoy? Because I think it is critical because we have not seen him in over a year. Yeah, and if he looks the part, I mean, I know you have mentioned it too on the draft show, that 2024 stuff is incredible. Yeah, it was. And Bobby Belt has the funny quote of, we have more recent Ezekiel Elliott Cowboys tape than we have Jamal McCoy Tennessee tape. That is how long it has been since he has played, which is insane to think about. Yeah, this week is the biggest week of his career. How he comes out and tests and looks in these positional drills, it would make me feel a lot more comfortable if he comes out and is completely perfect, and he is fantastic. Because that is the only thing giving me pause. I love Jamal McCoy's tape from 2024, but it was in 2024. It was a long time ago. And so I am curious to see what that looks like for him. It is a huge week. Give me one thing you have learned this week at the Combine. One thing I have learned is that I can actually take the shrimp cocktail at St. Elmo's a lot better than I expected. You know, I got 2 orders of those things, and I was just whole shrimps down in them. What have I learned? I have learned, you know, this is my 3rd year at the Combine. I have finally learned where to stake out the agents during the day. I know where to stake them out at night. I have finally figured it out. It took me 3 years, but I figured out where to stake them out during the day. Yesterday was super productive for me, and I am hoping to have some really good notes as the week goes on. Excellent. Love to hear it. Any other things you want to bring up, Cowboys-wise? No, not necessarily. I love your show. You guys do a great job. You give me good laughs. So shout out to the chat sports community. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate that, Nick. Thanks, guys. Remember to follow him on Twitter. It is Nick Harris, FWST, and the Cross Shot Podcast on YouTube. Hit him up, guys. Thank you.